Hi guys, welcome to another video for the World Cup. Today I've made Australian Lamingtons. These are a popular dessert throughout Australia. It's basically just yellow cake covered in chocolate and coconut. I filled it with raspberry jam. Starting with the cake, let's see how it's made. So first things first for our cake, we're going to start with our wet ingredients. Here I have just 2 sticks of butter at room temperature. To that we're going to add 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil and 2 cups of white sugar. Now I don't have an electric mixer, so I'm going to have to do all this by hand. So whenever I'm baking and I have to mix things by hand, I usually just cream the butter and the sugar together with a fork first, just to have everything incorporated, and then once it gets a little smoother, I switch to a whisk, and that way it just makes the creaming process a little easier so you don't have sugar going all over the place. So now the butter, sugar, and the vegetable oil is creamed together. You can add your 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and then your 6 egg yolks. I separate the whites from the yolks because I'm gonna mix the whites until they reach stiff peaks. So you're just gonna want to add the yolks at this point. So now you've added your egg yolks and your vanilla, and you can mix that together. Now lastly, for your wet ingredients, you're going to want to add 3/4 cup of tepid milk, whole milk. And just whisk that together carefully. So now after you've mixed in the milk, you can add your dry ingredients. This is just 3 cups of all-purpose flour and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, sifted. And you can just add that. So now that you're dry and your wet ingredients are mixed together, you can start whisking your egg whites until they reach stiff peaks. So now you see we reach stiff peaks. The egg whites stand straight up when you pull them out from the bowl. And now we can mix it into the batter. So now we're going to switch from the whisk to a wooden spoon or a rubber spatula if you prefer. And you're just going to mix in very gently the egg whites into the batter. So the egg whites are all mixed in and we're ready to bake. So to prepare our pan, we're just going to butter it on all sides and all edges. And then just add a little bit of sugar. And move it around. And then get rid of any excess. Now you can pour your batter into the pan. This recipe makes enough batter to make 2 9-inch pans. So I'm just going to pour only half of the batter. And now we're going to bake this in a preheated oven at 350 degrees for 30 minutes. So now I've pulled my cake from the oven and I've given it about 15 minutes to cool down. I'm just going to want to pull it out from the pan and let it cool even further on a cooling rack. Just let it cool down to about room temperature, or if you want you can place it in the fridge and let it cool down completely. So in the meantime our cake is cooling. I'm just going to get started on the raspberry jam. Now these strawberries I found for a decent price, so I'm not just using store-bought jam. You could buy seedless or with the seeds in them, but I strained the seeds out. So this is 6 ounces of raspberries, but after I strain the seeds out, it's obviously less than 6 ounces. So you usually want to use the same amount of sugar as raspberries. So instead of using 6 ounces of sugar, I'm going to use about half a cup of sugar, which is about 4 ounces. So now I'm adding my sugar. And I'm just going to stir the sugar in until it dissolves. Now once your sugar is dissolved and your jam is starting to simmer, just lower the heat a little bit and let this cook for about 10 to 15 minutes until you see the liquid starts to get a lot thicker, and then you can cool it down and it'll jam well. So now our jam is ready. You can see it's nice and thick. You can remove it from the pot and just let it cool in a separate container. So now our jam has cooled down and we can slice our cake and fill it with the jam. Now this cake is already cooled down to room temperature, so I'm just going to slice it through the middle. Now just move the jam as much as possible to the edges. We are going to trim the edges so the cake ends up looking nice and clean. So now our jam is spread out. Carefully take the other half of the cake, place it back on top. And then just trim away the edges until you reveal the jam. So we can see the jam through the middle here. So to do the same on all sides. Now it wasn't a requirement before, but now it is. This is gonna have to be put in the refrigerator or the freezer, so you can start putting your chocolate frosting on it. So while the cake is chilling in the fridge, I'm going to melt down some chocolate. I have 10 ounces here. I'm using double boiler. When you use a double boiler, try to make sure every single thing you use is dry, your utensil is dry, your bowl is dry, because even the smallest amount of water can seize up the chocolate. Sometimes even the steam, if your heat is too high for the water underneath, if the steam reaches into the chocolate, that'll seize up the chocolate as well. So just be very careful when you're mixing this together. So now our chocolate is all melted. It's still a little thick, so I add 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil. Now everything is mixed well, the chocolate's melted. After you add the oil, it should be much smoother, and it'll be easier to decorate the cake with. So now our cake is chilled. We can add some of the chocolate to it. And just spread it out to the edges. Once you've spread the chocolate, you can add your coconut. And after you put your coconut on the cake, you can put it back in the fridge and pull it back out, and then we're going to cut it into our individual pieces. So our cake is cooled down. Now we can cut it into individual pieces. The reason I just decorate one side first is because it just saves you the mess of decorating all sides all at once. Because there'll just be chocolate all over the place, all over your hands. It's just way easier like this. You do have to wait a little bit, but I think it's worth it. So now you have all your pieces cut, and it's turned over to the sides that haven't been decorated yet. you can add chocolate to them. And just make sure you get it all down the sides and evenly coated. Spread it around with your knife. So now we have all the lamingtons coated. As you can see, it is still a little bit of a messy process. It's inevitable. And they all aren't going to be coated perfectly, but it doesn't really matter because once you add the coconut, you can't really see any mistakes on the lamingtons. So now you can just coat each one. So now the lamingtons are well coated with the chocolate and coconut. Now you can just get them into the fridge and let them cool down and let the chocolate set. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This dessert is well worth its weight. If you want to bypass a lot of the steps, you could just use a store-bought cake or a store-bought jam. But to be honest, if you're going to go through all the steps of waiting for the cake to be chilled and stuff like that, you might as well just make the cake yourself and make the jam yourself. Just like, comment, subscribe, and share your thoughts.